anybody who doesn't know, I'm Matt Flanco with the Fallston Soccer Board. I want to thank everybody that tells me that somebody's reading their limit. So thank you very much for that. We're really excited tonight, as we've been saying, to have John here from Changing the Game Project. John's a national speaker. He's been working with a bunch of different groups, including U.S. Olympics, U.S. Soccer, USA Football, U.S. Lacrosse, U.S. Swimming, Ireland Rugby, Aussie Rules Football. He's getting ready to head overseas again to work with another group. So we're really excited to have John here. He's going to spend a little bit of time talking to us tonight about how we can make youth sports experience a little bit better for all of our kids. So with that, you're not here to hear me, you're here to hear John. So John, that's all. Thank you, John.
Thanks. Thank you all so much. I live in Oregon, and I had to come here for the rain, so I appreciate that. I also had like a lifetime worth of crab for lunch today too, so thank you for that. I appreciate you coming out tonight to talk about our kids. We just spent an hour with coaches. I know a lot of people have stuck around. It was great. If you see all this, this was our little project that we did. And what I asked the coaches was to write down the qualities of the best coaches they had ever had. And we had 5, and then we stuck them up. And then on this side was all the qualities that had to do with how much their coach knew about the game. And then this side was how much the coach cared and how much the coach was able to connect. And really trying to get across to them, how do we connect with players? How do we connect with parents? How do we let people know that we're all in for them, which builds trust and which builds engagement and which keeps kids in sports. So I spent many years around the sport of soccer. I grew up on Long Island. I was a multi-sport kid. Decided in high school soccer was my thing. I played college soccer at Fordham University in New York City. I played professionally after that for a while. I had a couple of injuries. So I got into coaching, and I coached a high school team first, and I coached 4 years at the University of Vermont. Coached youth soccer, ran a club in Oregon when I first moved out there. Then worked for the Portland Timbers for a little while, and then 6 years ago, kind of my life changed because I was watching these girls play. They were the Mighty Unicorns. This was my daughter's first soccer team, and so I'm watching the Mighty Unicorns, and it was the typical 6-year-old soccer game, right? They can score in both goals, and they're equally as excited. And the parents are positive. There's no referees. The coaches are great. Everyone's like, well, of course they're making mistakes. They're 6, right? And I'm thinking, this is great. And then right next door is a 10-year-old boys' competitive soccer game. And it's competitive not because the kids are competing harder, because all the adults are competing harder. And they're yelling and screaming at the kids on every play, and they're all yelling at the ref, who's like 13. And this kid makes a bad pass, the other team steals it, scores a goal, and the coach jumps off the bench and subs him out. Get out of the game. And he's walking off the field with his head down, and all the adults that are important to him in his life are yelling at him for making a mistake. I'm thinking to myself, this is crazy. Is this what, are my parents going, yeah, look at that, 4 years, that's going to be us. Can't wait for that. Right? And so that was kind of this moment where it's like, I've learned a lot in coaching, and I've learned a lot as a parent of my own kids, and I've been a surrogate parent for so many other kids as a coach. Maybe I could share some of this. So that was kind of the idea for Changing the Game Project. And it's been this amazing journey that now, as Ben said, it takes me all around the world. Next week I'll be in Thailand, I'll be in Ireland and England in January, be in Canada in 3 weeks. So it takes me all around the world talking to people like you and talking to kids and talking to coaches about how we can make sports better. Because right now this is the problem in sports around the world, is that we lose most of the kids involved in sports by the time they're 13 years old. They walk away. They quit. And when you combine that with the fact that schools are cutting recess and physical education, in spite of all the evidence that shows that activity has a great correlation to academic performance, and rising obesity rates and health rates, and what we know is that if children are active at age 10, 11, 12, they're active, involved in sports, moving comfortably, they have 1/10 the obesity rate, they do better in school, they're less likely to do drugs, they're more likely to go to college. And yet, year after year, we have kids moving less and less. And so sports, I think, is so important that we provide a great experience for kids. That we as parents help provide the environment that keeps them in it, regardless of whatever path they're on. And so that's what I want to talk about tonight. How can we do that? And I want to talk a little bit about what are some of the things that makes these guys and these girls walk away. I want to talk about some of the psychology of performance, what helps them perform the best, and then what we can do as parents. And if you have a question, please ask. There'll be time at the end for Q&A, but I like Q&A during, because that really gets to the heart of what's happening here, what's happening in Fallston, what's happening in Maryland, what's happening locally, rather than me talking in big generalities. Okay? So let me do this. I'm going to give you 1 minute and turn to the person next to you, if you have a group of 2 or 3, and just talk about what are the 2 or 3 things that you see is really different in sports for you, for your kids today, than it was for you when you were growing up. All right? And if you're still growing up, that's okay. You just listen to your parents. Okay? Go ahead. So as we bring our attention back to the front here, what are some of the things that came up? So share some of the things that are different in sports today. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Yeah, you did. They start younger, right? In organized sports. Yeah.
Not everybody got trophies.
Not everyone got trophies. Yeah. Big business and awards these days. Yeah. There's a lot more club, a lot less sort of in-town leagues and school sports. As schools have cut budgets, those are gone. What else? Yeah.
Single sport focused.
Yeah, so the single sport focus at younger and younger ages. Yes. So travel teams, definitely. So again, the in-town, the death of in-town leagues, right? Where there was always travel teams, but they didn't start, right? I grew up in Long Island. Like when we were 9, no one was like, "Dude, we got to go to LA. We got to play those guys." Right? Yeah. No social media. And what's the dynamic of social media? Yeah. Yeah. The sharing. So everyone's, and the sharing, especially on the Facebooks and stuff, like no one shares their 8th place ribbons, right? So you look at all these things like, oh my God, right? Or you see some 10-year-old in Argentina and you go, look at him playing soccer, what's wrong with my DNA, right? And so, yeah, that's a whole different aspect for us as adults and then for kids playing too. What else? Yeah.
More personal trainers.
More personal trainers. And again, it doesn't mean that that's a bad thing, right? Because they can certainly add a lot to something, but I would group that into the business of sport has gotten really big. Yeah.
I
we were more, I think they were more sort of invested in, hey, this is a long-term thing, and it's a process, and if you love it, great, if you don't, you don't, but we didn't worry about winning the 10-year-old Super Duper Elite Cup. That didn't matter, right? Because does anyone remember winning the 10-year-old Super Duper Elite Cup? No, but you remember the hotel? Yes. Yeah.
In my high school, I played lacrosse, and I picked up my first lacrosse at high school. Just play lacrosse. I didn't start at 8,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
They're not having as much fun as
Just
they used to because it's too competitive.
Because I think of a lot of these factors, right? The fun is kind of dragged out because of competition or specialization or all these folks. Is that a hand in the back or just, yeah?
Like club jumping, where you stay with a team for so long and then you think you can get something better somewhere else and then you go somewhere else.
So this sort of lack of loyalty or just this need, sort of, and I think a lot of it's, I would call it as a parent as well, or I have an 11, 12-year-old now, right? Sort of this fear of missing out, right? That, if we don't jump to clubs, we might miss out. We might miss out on the coach. We might miss out on the big tournament, the big recruiting opportunity. Yeah.
It's like a business with Americans.
Yeah.
It says scholarship now, right? Is that
Mm-hmm.
you got to be so focused on it.
Yeah. It's really hard. I mean, I think it's definitely harder because it's so public and because we hear what everyone else is doing and we feel this pressure that we have to do it as well. And a lot of the things that we do are not necessarily the right things. There might be what lots of people are doing. So there's a very famous sports psychologist named Dr. Jim Taylor, and he's got a great new book that comes out October 14th, and I got to read it. It's really good. And I just interviewed him for my podcast that's not out yet. But he said something that's really funny. He goes, in my experience of 30 years working with Olympic athletes and all that, he said, all the parents that I've met love their kids. A large number of them from time to time do things that are not so helpful for their kids. And a very small percentage are mentally ill. Right? And so we can get caught up in that really small percentage, but most people, we love our kids and we just want to help. And so I think it's really, really important to do that, and we're equipped with really good information and knowledge so that we don't get as scared when our neighbor or our teammate's doing something and we're like, oh my God, my kid's not doing that or my kid's not showing that yet. So I want to talk about a couple of these things that really drive the dropout rates. And one for kids is a loss of ownership of the experience, loss of autonomy. The sport experience doesn't belong to them. It belongs to the parent who signed them up to this or that. We're going to do this, and we're going to go into this and this and this. The transfer rate, the dropout rate, the quitting rate of Division I college sports is far higher than it's ever been. Because so many kids get there, and years ago they lost the love. They lost the love of sport. They lost the whole engagement factor. And one of those things, and someone talked about it, is this. And to be fair, he's very good. So this push, for early specialization, more, younger. You talked about picking up a lacrosse stick for the first time when you were in high school. There's a very few number of sports which are considered early specialization sports. Anyone know what they are? Gymnastics, not golf. Tennis, not really, not from a motor skill learning standpoint. Not swimming. Ice skating, figure skating. And dance, someone said dance, right? And dance. So these are sports that require certain body movements and flexibility that have to be developed before an athlete hits puberty. Now there's other sports that we would definitely call early engagement sports. That would be soccer. that would be ice hockey. There's no story of a soccer player who's kicked the ball for the first time when they're 18 and turned pro, or put on skates for the first time, right? But most sports, most team sports, athletes hit their athletic peak in their 20s, whereas in gymnasts and dancers, they peak in their early to mid-teens. And so they're really going to be an Olympic athlete. They have to pour in a lot of hours. But in something like soccer, right, a lot of those hours, you need some early, but there's transfer, and there's things that go, you know, kids are not robots that all we have to do is program skill into them, and then they will do this. They're human beings. They have motivation, they have engagement, they have communication, they have inspiration, they have all these other things that go into that pot that says, hey, I'm going to do this long enough and with the attention to actually get really good at it. What the science around early specialization shows is that children who play only one sport prior to the age of 12 are 70 to 90% more likely to get injured, twice the rates of overuse injury, and much higher burnout and dropout rates. And a lot of those kids who burn out and drop out then, they leave all sports forever. They don't go back to anything. So it's, it's fair. Now, yes, do we have the Williams sisters? Do we have Tiger Woods? Of course we do. We do a great job celebrating the exceptions, but there's tens of thousands of golfers you've never heard of whose dad thought that he would be the next Earl Woods. Right? And it just doesn't work like that. Malcolm Gladwell did us a big disservice in Outliers when he talked about the 10,000-hour rule. Has anyone heard that idea? Right? Who knows it's not true? Right? There's no such thing as the 10,000-hour rule. The man who did the research, Anders Ericsson, was looking at what he calls deliberate practice. How do we practice to get better at something? Right? And he did some research on musicians, a really tiny number, and found that on average they had put in a certain amount of hours, and then Malcolm Gladwell called it the 10,000-hour rule, which to his credit he has since retracted, but no one reads the retraction. Right? So we had soccer clubs mapping out 10,000 specific hours for kids, that all of a sudden this was some magic boundary. And yet across many sports we have people who are Olympians after a couple hundred hours because of transferability of skills and things like that. We have an Olympic men's volleyball player who played in the NBA, and he started playing volleyball when he was 24. Right, so we have these activities that we can pick up later on if we're good athletes. Now, I've been to Barcelona, I've been to Manchester United. I will not argue that those kids don't play a ton of soccer because they love it, but they have a multi-movement experience within their sport. In Manchester United, they do parkour, they do tumbling. You go to their gym, it's a gymnastics gym. Right? At Ajax, anyone see the goal that Zlatan Ibrahimovic scored for his 500th goal the other day? Yeah, it was insane, right? He's a black belt in Taekwondo from his time at Ajax, right? So if your son or if your daughter is at that age and they're going down that single sport track because the reality of the world says this is what I have to do, they need a multi-movement experience within that. And that's where maybe a strength and conditioning coach comes in. That's where parkour, that's where martial arts, that's where yoga comes in. Tony Strudrick he's now with Wales, but he was Alex Ferguson's first team fitness coach. And I saw him a couple years ago at a talk, and he said, every athlete under the age of 12 needs to play more than one sport. Right? So this is a huge thing, and if we just push and only do this, then we get stuck. And I know, when I first talked to Ben, that Fallston Soccer Club deals with, kids who, trying to create this multi-sport experience for kids, and sometimes their other sports don't allow it. Now, it's really hard to, just because, we say, hey, be multi-sport, doesn't mean that we want to be multi-sport year-round, right, with balancing 3 sports either, because that's also burnout and injury and things. And there are also some sports that are more complementary season-wise. To go from soccer to basketball to lacrosse is far easier than, maybe trying to play 2 fall sports, right? I don't know many ice hockey skiers. right? It's really hard to do. Right? So people say, oh, you should be multi-sport. I'm like, yeah, but not at the same time, right? So this is all really important, I think, for us to understand. Number two thing that makes people drop out is our overemphasis on childhood success. These kids are all 12. Right? Those two kids are at Fulham on the left. They were born a week apart. They're all 12 years old. A 12-year-old boy might have a 5-year developmental age swing, which means he might have the body of a 10-year-old or a 15-year-old. Now, do you guys ever scrimmage your U10s against your 15s? No, we wouldn't do that, but is that what a 12-year-old soccer game looks like sometimes? Right? And then what happens also is we look at that, the number 7, and I'm not saying I don't know the kid, I don't know that he's not a great soccer player, but we say, wow, look how good he is. Right? We just had the Little League World Series, right? And they're like, well, look at this kid. I'm like, he's got a mustache. Right? So when we look at, how we're defining, someone as talented when they're young, oftentimes the ones that we identify as talented, the ones that we pick on the A team and all that, which kids are they? Besides the coach's kid, that's different. Which kids? The biggest, the fastest early developers who are usually born when? Older. They're usually born within 3 months of whatever your arbitrary calendar cutoff date is. My friend Oscar is the U10 coach at La Masia, Barcelona. 92% of the children in La Masia for soccer are born between January and June. In England, the cutoff is September 1st, based on the school year. Guess where 90% of the kids in those kids are born, right? So if you're born in October, you're better off being born in England if you want to be a professional soccer player than being born in Spain. Yet Xavi Hernandez was born in October, right? So if you have a son or daughter who's having great success because they're bigger, faster, stronger, know that is, unless you're 6'8", and if you're LeBron James, yes, that may continue. But for most people, it's not going to continue. And the far greater determinant of whether a kid is going to make it is habits. Do they have a teachable spirit? Are they resilient? Do they work hard? Do they own it? Do they love it? These are the things that are far greater determinants than how you do it 9 or 10 or 11 or 12. And this is so important. So there was a soccer player in England. When he was 11 years old, he was the fastest kid. He was the fastest kid in the country. He was a sprinter too. And a very, very good soccer player. And then at 16, he was struggling. He was going through a growth spurt. He was, he'd gone from the fastest to the 7th fastest on his own team. And they weren't sure if they were going to keep him in this club, very well-known club. And so they said, should we keep him? Because at 16, they have to decide, and you get a 3-year, what's called a YTS contract, where you get signed for 3 years, and it's like a full scholarship to continue your training. And half the coaching staff said keep him, and half the coaching staff said we should let him go. And so they brought in a scout who first saw him to break the tie, and he said, I think we need to keep him because there's something there, and if we're patient, we have to realize that, hey, he's just going through this growth spurt. So on a 3-2 vote, Southampton decided to keep a guy called Gareth Bale. Gareth Bale, right? Was the 7th fastest kid on his team at 15. But all of a sudden he finished his growth spurt, and a year later he broke into the first team, and then Tottenham, and now Real Madrid. So when people are like, oh yeah, those 9-year-olds, I can pick them. Right? You can. You can usually select the older ones. I guarantee that I could go to any sport, any tryout, certainly for 12 and unders, and if here's the coach in charge of the tryouts, and just give me the dates of birth, and I bet you I'd get 80% of them right. Right? This is called the relative age effect. Now, if you have a late bloomer, who has a late bloomer in this group? Anyone? I do. I have a daughter who's a December birthday. Right? So she's excited because she just jumped up from the 33rd tallest in her age group to the 32nd. Right? So what are those things that I can't control when she's going to grow, But I could, I was like that too. I wrestled at 98 pounds in 8th grade. Right? And I was 170 when I graduated high school. Right? But what I can, say to her is, do you show up early? Do you do extra? Do you stay late? Are you coachable? You better be coachable because I'm our coach, right? All these qualities that she's in control over. You're working on your technique. All these things, she controls those things so that when she grows, she takes that skill set with her. Right? Many early bloomers don't develop that skill set. And then what happens is when everyone else catches up, they walk away. Because it used to come really easy, right? Oh, that was so easy. I never really had to work hard at practice before. And then, everyone else is there and they haven't learned to work hard. I have a video here. I forgot it was on here, but I want to show it because this is a rugby video from Australia. And my question to you is this kid actually, is he really 9? They're like me, I'm going to run as close to him as possible so it looks like I'm trying to get him, but I'm not going anywhere near that. Right? Is he really 9? Not really. Right? Is that really rugby? I see a bunch of his teammates just kind of standing around watching him run through. That's not rugby. Right? So again, we just have to be very careful on what we identify as talent or how much we pour into athletic success. Really what we have to look at, especially in a place like Fallston where our soccer program is a great feeder for a high school program, right? The most players possible, as long as possible, best environment possible. That's how we build good high school programs, not try to identify the kids that we think are going to be great as early as possible. Right? We have a multi-million-dollar example of how bad we are at talent evaluation every single year. You know what it's called? The NFL draft. Right? 23-year-olds, and we get it wrong often. Right? So we shouldn't try to be doing it at 8 or 9. Okay? And then just myth 3, and then we'll do some questions, is just this idea of, and I think someone said, right, sports is an investment, right? That this is this path to a scholarship. I'm not saying that your son or daughter might not get a scholarship. Maybe they will. The fact is about 3% of high school athletes play college sports. It varies by sport. Right around 1% get financial aid to do so. All right, there's more college sports teams that don't have scholarships than do. Right? In soccer, you might have 24 to 28 guys on a Division I team. There's 9.9 scholarships. Right? Girls soccer is 14. Outside of football and basketball, most scholarships aren't full. The average athletic award, I think, is around $12,000 a year now. So sports can and should be an investment in lots of things. But the idea that it's an investment in, with a financial return, it's not really a really good play. If we use it as an investment in resilience, surrounding our kids with positive role models, a place to teach the values that we value at home, and the extension of the educational mission of our schools, man, sport can be awesome. But if its sole mission is, got to get that money at the end, a lot of times it doesn't work out. Or you can do everything right, and someone can still get hurt. So these are the things I think that, they take away ownership, they take away engagement and enjoyment for the kids. Kids, well, I'll talk about that in a sec. So, any questions on any of that? Yeah. Yeah.
But for a lot of people, that college coaches trying to explain to the parents, it's not happening. Like,
Yeah, and you know, so there's way more academic money. I think there's, you know, orchestra as well. Like there's a lot of places, you know, and again, if we use the money that we invest in sports to develop character of our kids, that's an unbelievable investment, right? And I'm not ever saying that, you know, I've met plenty of coaches that I would pay a lot of money to have them around my kids because of their program and their quality. And I have met some big name coaches that couldn't pay me to get anywhere near my kids, right? And so, yeah, so just this idea that, you know, this is an investment that has a financial return. It might, but it's very rare, and it's very rare that they're equivalent. Now, sports can certainly maybe help kids get into a school academically that they couldn't get into before. But I do a lot of team development. I have teams in the Big Ten, and I have teams in Division III sports in like the NESCAP. And I love those kids because they're just playing for the love of the game. Love of the game. And we're still fighting for a national championship, and those kids are working hard. But when I work with those coaches always have to come back to, it's for the love of the game. Because if this isn't fun, there's nothing holding those kids there. Right? I have questions on that. Got a question?
Are you finding that parents are hedging not for college but for high school, for private high school? That seems to be what clubs are pushing towards, is ends with private high schools and hedging money at private high school, which is as much as college money.
Yeah. It's certainly bigger here or in the Northeast than it is in other parts of the country. Certainly where I live in Oregon, it's not a big thing. I went to a Catholic high school on Long Island, so it was certainly not the expense that some people pay now. Different, you know, a lot of sports, any sort of college recruiting has moved away from high school sports. I don't know enough about every sport to say, oh, this one. And it's not to say that you can't get recruited from high school, but for a lot of them, it's not. Football is certainly one where high school sport is it. Basketball, you can, but it's AAU is taken over. I don't know about volleyball. I think it's club. You know, but again, the high school sport experience is awesome. I loved my high school, high school sports experience, right? And it's such a wonderful thing. I feel in the soccer world with the developmental academy, boys and girls now not being able to play high school sports, to me is really sad. Because no one comes to your club games, right? But to play in front of your school and all that. My high school teammate who went on and played for the national team is the coach of the New York Red Bulls now. You know, we talk about that, like winning a championship as seniors in high school. Like that's one of his favorite memories in sports. And he won MLS titles and US Open Cups. And he's still like that, you know, playing in front of my friends and the guys I grew up with, and the people I hung out with every day for 4 years. So I don't think we should ever devalue high school sports. And then sometimes, you know, the club kids who might be the 8th best kid on their club team, but maybe the best on their high school team, that's a whole different role, right? And that's a whole different set of responsibilities and leadership qualities that we can bring out of them. And so I always thought that's a good thing. And so I never devalue that. But yeah, I mean, you would know your area better than me, but I think that's certainly it. Certainly, you know, in this area of the country, with you know, kids, you know, being 19 and as a senior and stuff as well, because they're held back young as well. You know, that as an effort to combat relative age, it seems to have short-term benefits, but not necessarily long-term ones. So, any other questions on that? Cool. So, how can we, as parents, as coaches, as adults, as mentors, overcome this stuff? Well, I think it all starts with, why do kids play? Why do you guys play? Why do you play? Sports. It's fun? Yeah. Because it's fun. What are, you know, I had a group last time, some kids in, we talked about what makes sports fun. This woman named Amanda Visick. Well, first of all, I like this kid. He's awesome. So this woman named Amanda Visick from George Washington University did a study for the Aspen Institute. She asked kids, why do you play? 9 out of 10, number one answer, fun. So she said, well, what makes it fun? And this is what they came up with. Here was the top, they came up with 81 characteristics. Top 6 things. Right there. Trying your best. Look how a couple of them are about team dynamics, playing well as a team, getting along with your teammates, getting playing time, God forbid, right? Being treated with respect, being active. A little further down the list, we have things like winning at number 48. Right? I'm sorry, my photographer friend taking team pictures was dead last. Except if you get to make funny faces, then it really moves way up. Right? So kids like to win, they want to win. Right? When they're really young, about a minute after the game ends, what do they want to know? What's the snack? Right? It's us who struggle with, but we lost. Right? My daughter, when she was 10, played her first travel soccer tournament. And I flew in from a speaking gig in Colorado. I was just a parent on the side, and they just get crushed. It's 10-0. And I'm thinking to myself, my God, she's going to be miserable at the end of this. She's going to be so sad. What am I going to say? She walks over after with her teammates and said, hey, Mag, how you doing? She goes, Dad, the hotel has a pool. Right? So we can talk about what makes us better later on and all that, but the hotel has a pool, right? So we have to make sure that we understand what makes sports fun and what doesn't. We have to focus on those things. Now, fun for kids is not, she's doing a new study, Amanda Visick, on what she calls the not fun madness. The things that make sports not fun. Fooling around, not fun. Kids who don't listen or pay attention, not fun. Coaches who aren't organized, not fun. Parents who yell from the sideline, not fun. They came up with 90 characteristics which made sport not fun, and 75 had to do with the adults. So we have to be better. So you have to understand, I like this little equation. This is from a great book called The Inner Game of Tennis by a man named Tim Galloway. Performance is potential minus interference. How kids play is their potential, their genetics, and their hours of practice and all that. Minus the things that interfere with it. The single greatest thing that interferes with how they play is between their ears. Right? It's their state of mind. How they show up. That makes the difference. No team I ever coached lost their skill on Saturday. But we could be unfocused. We weren't ready to play. Whatever it is. We're scared. My son's team, I was telling these guys in the car today, my son's team, he's a U12 soccer player. They played a game this weekend, and they lost to a very good team from Portland. And he comes back and goes, yeah, but Dad, they haven't lost a game in 2 years. I'm like, who told you that? Why is that relevant? Right? So he's been told that this is okay because they haven't lost in 2 years by some parent on the team thinking that he's helping his kids get ready to play. That's not helping at all. That's not helping at all. So we have to be, as parents, as coaches, people who strip away interference. Now, oftentimes we add interference. And I want to show you how. So I have 2 videos. And video 1 is my daughter, she was 7, at her first piano recital. Look what happens when she makes a mistake. Did you notice when she made a mistake, her piano teacher yelling at her? No, right? Anyone ever been to your kid's orchestra concert when someone's like, the woodwinds are killing us tonight? No, right? Because it makes total sense. Like, that wouldn't help. But then we have soccer games, right? We do this. I have another video of a 6-year-old soccer game. Anyone worried you're on it? You're not. Don't worry. It's from California. 6-year-old soccer game. Guys going, it's like a cheerleader on track. Go back to Jim Taylor's checklist. Does she love her kids? Yes. Is she mentally ill? No. She's loving them in a helpful way. It's I speak to 10,000 kids a year, and I always ask them, what would you like your parents to say on the sideline of your game? What do you think they say? Nothing. They all, especially high school. High school kids don't even care to come. Right? But there's nothing. I've yet in my life ever met a kid who's like, I love it when my dad yells at the ref. It's super helpful. Right? So, how can we, right, understand what kids want from us? We're going to do a little activity together here. And this is a psychological test called the Stroop test. It was developed in 1935, a guy named John Ridley Stroop, and what he hypothesized that when we add cognitive interference, when we're screaming instructions from the sideline, it actually slows down our physical reaction time to the task. We're going to take the Stroop test together. It's a 2-part test. So, out loud, as a group, as fast as we can go, when I say go, we're going to read this green, yellow, purple, red, blue, yellow, all 4 lines. Right, the record's like 8 seconds. You got a lot of people. I don't think you can break it, but we'll see. Right, so out loud as fast as you can go, right, all 4 lines. On your marks, get set, go. Okay, that was pretty good. I heard one over here, someone said green, yellow, blah, blah, blah. Right. Did anyone else get blah, blah, blah in there somewhere? Yeah, right? So when the person like next to you or in front of you all gets ahead of you or they're loud, right? You can stay on, but you all of a sudden you have to like add in all this extra cognitive like energy, like I gotta stay connected to this. But that's actually not the Stroop test. That's not very hard. That's an interference-free zone. Here's the Stroop test. Everyone else goes, oh. Now, instead of reading the word, you have to say the color. So you have to say blue, red, green, blue, yellow, blue. Out loud, as fast as we can go. You got 10 seconds last time. On your marks, get set, go. Raise your hand if you quit. Right? I think sometimes this is what it feels like for kids when there's 2 coaches on this side and 32 on the other, yelling instructions. Right? Think about soccer. in a split second. I got to assess the situation. I have to choose a solution. I have to decide upon the best solution. I can add some deception. I technically execute it, and I reassess my choice, and I move on. Think about that. That has to happen so quickly. They can't take input from us. As soon as we start taking input, they stop doing the things that the games required. And these are those moments where, and I'm guilty of this as a coach sometimes. Someone plays it back to my center midfielder, and she sees this pass here, and I start yelling and switching. Right? And she goes, oh. And then all of a sudden it's off her foot, gone. Right? And then my initial reaction is, why are you playing so slow? And then realistically, it's because of me. Right? So we don't want our kids playing like this. We want them playing like this. Right? We have to strip away interference. Right? So how do we do that? In my book, I talk about sort of these, what I call the 7 C's of a high-performing state of mind. The ways that we strip away how our kid, the things that interfere with performance. From our common sense and perspective, the right conditions, good communication. I wrote that chapter with my lifelong friend who's a hostage negotiator. I'm like, if anyone can talk to kids, it's a hostage negotiator. Right? Caring, control and ownership, we talked about that before. Competence. And competence, getting better at something, breeds confidence. And all these things work together. So, what are some things that we can do? Right? What are some things that get all these things working well together? Number one, right? Parents and coaches, we got to work together. We're not the enemy. We have to understand, I think, I just forgot the psychological word, but anyway, it's basically, sometimes as coaches, we look at the way that parents act, and we say, well, that's how they are. But really, it's not how they are. It's the culture and the situation that they're put in. So parents, it's really hard to be a parent. I was on Long Island last week, and I was a former teammate of mine, now a school superintendent. And we were just talking about how times have changed. And so when I was a senior in high school, the championship game ended with us up 1-0 and 10 seconds left, and some kid on the other team turned around and headbutted one of our players in the face. And then there's a skirmish and a brawl, and someone gets punched, right? As our team's trying to break it up, someone gets punched. We have an old VHS tape of this. Now, if that happened today, would it be on the nightly news? Yeah. But it wasn't then. No one knew about it. We kind of laughed about it today. No one was hurt. Right? But I think as a parent today, everything that our kids do is so public. It's all in danger of being on their permanent record. And so we fight so hard to keep it off. And sometimes when we're doing that, right, we look at, coaches who are pushing them, and we were afraid of missing out, and all this sort of stuff. And we act not because we don't want our kids to experience these things, but that it's the reality is that, hey, if something bad happens, that can stick with them forever, much more than it used to. So I think one of the most important things is that coaches and parents start working together to trust each other. That as coaches, we have to be connected to your kids, right? You have to know that we're all in for them. And when we are, you have to trust us, and when something doesn't go right, can you pick up the phone? Can you call? Now, I've met coaches who are like, I don't talk to parents, I don't call, I don't email, I don't even make eye contact. That's bull. Right? That's wrong. There's no way that we would say, if our kid was struggling in math, and we call the math teacher was like, oh, no, I'm the math teacher, right? But we do this in sports, and it's really, really sad. I've worked many years with many parents, and what I found is that by building this relationship with them where I am imperfect and I make mistakes, but when I make a mistake, they let me know and say, I think you said something to my daughter, because she came home pretty upset today. Or other times, hey, my daughter's come home from practice 3 days in a row crying because someone at practice is saying something to her that I didn't see, And I didn't know, but now I can intervene and make a difference. So we have this trust. When I do something wrong, it usually, if I can catch it right away, I'll talk to that kid right after practice. I'll send him a quick email to mom and dad, right, that says for, whoever, Sam. And I'll be like, hey, at the end of the game, we talked about this, and I just want to make sure, that, I value you, and I like how you saw it, and I saw it differently, and we'll work on that this week. It's amazing how many parents are just so appreciative of that. I was on the plane yesterday just talking to a mom of a kid of mine who's sort of like a borderline A and B team kid. And I just sent her a note and said, hey, you want to talk? And she was a University of Washington soccer player. So this mom is a very good, she actually knows the game. And I just said, hey, something's up with your daughter right now. Can we chat about it? And we had this chat, and she's not quite as into it anymore, and I don't know that she wants to play in high school, and we're kind of perplexed with that, but okay, whatever. And so we had this great chat, and I said, how can I help, and whatever. And she just said something, and she said, you know what, thanks for noticing. Thanks for noticing that my daughter's not there, right? She's not doing as well as she did. And so I think as coaches, we have to notice these things. We have to connect. We have to do that. And as parents, we have to be grateful and thankful when those coaches do that, right? Because it makes a big, big difference. When we say to our kids after the game, why does Jenny play striker all the time? You're the best striker. In our minds, we're building our kid up. In our kid's mind, they're like, wow, mom doesn't trust the coach. Mom doesn't trust Jenny, right? It builds distrust amongst the group. So we have to, I like this story. This guy had a great blonde, right? He was a French tightrope walker. And he used to come and tightrope walk across Niagara Falls. And he shows up this one year with his cart. And he says to the 10,000 people, I'm the great blonde, do you think I can walk across the falls? And they're all cheering his name. He says, do you think I can push this cart across the falls? And they're all going, blonde, blonde. He says, who wants to get in the cart? No one, because trust is not about our ability as coaches, right? It's about connection, it's about dependable, it's about admitting when we're wrong, right? And as parents too, those emotional moments after a game, something's gone wrong, not a great time to confront a coach, never a great time to confront a referee, never a great time to post something in anger on social media, right? I get these emails, but I posted it on Facebook, the coach wasn't supposed to see it, right? So can we do that? Because we have to work together, right? This is huge. We have to, as parents, embrace the desirable difficulties, the things that sports presents our kids with. They're not starting. They lost their starting spot. They didn't get there. They have a new coach who sees things differently, right? The X's and O's, the things we have to ask ourselves: is this situation difficult? Well, great. If it's difficult, this is a learning opportunity. Is this situation dangerous? My kid's self-esteem is suffering. They're coming home, their confidence, their body image, whatever. That's the time to intervene. But I get stuff, I get all sorts of emails. Some which are like, we got a new coach, and my kid has been number 9 for 5 years. And now is not number 9 anymore. How should I handle that? Like, is this real? Right? That's not a difficulty. Move on. Right? So embrace these desirable difficulties. And one of the most important places to realize that, hey, kids struggle and sports is hard sometimes and they need their own space is the riding. When they survey kids and say, what's your worst memory of sports? This is always the number one answer. Right? Because, we're got locked in the car, right? We're stuck in traffic, and we're going to make this a teachable moment. And kids tell us over and over that this is maybe the least teachable moment. It's really hard, right? So I have this video from a HBO show called Trophy Kids. Anyone seen that? Seen Trophy Kids? And there's a scene in here just of, documentary of the ride.
Did you tell the coach to put you inside the game?
Yep.
How many times?
Stand right next to him.
Are you sure? Because I stood right next to you.
I was by him as many times as I could be.
Dude, you're not getting it done. Let me explain something to you. If you do something wrong, do I tell you?
Yeah.
Okay, I correct it. Or I tell you so you can correct it. How do you know what to correct if you don't even know why he pulled you out of the game? What did I tell you about that? What, are you scared of him or something?
No.
So why don't you go ask him? Like right now, you know we're gonna have this conversation after the game. You know it's coming. Okay, this is part of you becoming a young man. If someone does something, you're just gonna take it? So if I was to walk up to you and just slap you inside your face, what are you gonna do? Just turn around and be like, I don't know why that guy did that. It doesn't make any sense, Jay. You act like you're 10 or 9 or 8. Dude, you're just going through the motions. If you're gonna be selfish, you know what? You have other brothers and sisters. Okay, we'll take you from out of that school and give them a chance and put them in a private school. I don't understand it. I don't understand it. It confuses me. What's the problem?
Every time I come back in the car, I always feel like I'm in trouble or I did something wrong.
Well, did you?
Yeah.
You've had more personal training than any of those kids out there. Okay? Back to the drawing board. Back up to getting early, back up inside the morning. Okay? Because it doesn't make any sense. You have me driving back and forth from this school. Back and forth, back and forth. Back and forth for you to go out and do absolutely nothing. I don't understand why you don't get it. I don't understand it.
So, does everyone who's seen it remember how that ends?
Yes.
What happened?
He eventually moves with his mother away from his dad.
Yeah, and quits football.
He plays football, yes.
Right. So, you know, it's tough, and there's a situation, right, where, you know, there's a dad, and he's saying, hey, I'm sending you to this school, I'm making these sacrifices for you. And that's all relevant, for sure. But the words the kid used in that, every time I get in the car, I feel like I did something wrong. Never have a moment to myself to celebrate. This is what the research shows, that especially when kids win, they just want to enjoy it. If they lose, they already feel badly, right? We posted this on our Facebook page and had this back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and then some guy wrote in and said, hey, I was the cameraman. I was sitting in the front seat, right? And how difficult it was for him to see this kid go through this. So I'm not saying that we can't have expectations for our kids, but we have to pick and choose, and we have to understand their state of mind. When are we going to make these moments teachable moments, right? Especially if we have something to offer. Right? Because that type of interaction usually leads kids to walk away. If your son or daughter likes to bring up the game, how did I do today, Dad? How did I do today? By all means, have the conversation. But if you're the one who's always bringing it up, right, be very careful about that. Be very careful. Now, when I told this story in my TED Talk when my son was 5 and played his first soccer game, and it was like this great moment. I was like so proud of him. He goes to his first game and he goes, nah, I don't want to play. And he walks off. I was like, okay, fair enough. Go to practice that week, he's fine. Game 2, show up, there's a game before us, there's all these tall adults yelling and screaming. He's like, look around. Game's about to start, he goes, nah, not playing. He walks off the game. Now I'm angry, right? Now I'm upset, I'm embarrassed. He's totally fine, he found like a lizard or a cricket or something, right? He's like perfectly happy, but I'm mad. So we get in the car afterwards, buckling in, and this all I'm thinking about is my son, why won't he play? What's wrong with him? And I turn around, I'm like, so TJ, and all of a sudden, wham, I get karate chop in the chest by my wife who's sitting next to me. What was that for? She was like, really? Can you write a book about this? Right? So, be very careful on that ride. Really the best thing you can do after, I love watching you play. Love watching you play hockey, I love watching you play soccer. I tell my kids I love skiing with you, I love camping, I love fishing, whatever it is. I just enjoy that time with them because boy, this goes by fast. So parents tell me all the time with older athletes, right? This goes by so fast. So enjoy those moments. I love watching you play. It frees them from the burden of being responsible for your happiness. I get more phone calls about this and emails from people who say, I saw you speak, or I read your book, and I thought that was kind of dumb. And that changed everything about my relationship with my kids. I've had people who've called up a college age athlete and said, I never told you I loved watching you play. And they're like, now I have a relationship with my son or my daughter again. And sports had taken that away from us. Not because my intentions were bad, not because I'm mentally ill, but because I love them so much that I never really stopped to think about if I was loving them in a helpful way. So if you take nothing from tonight, think about that. Think about that. So here's the last piece. We would have loved tonight if this auditorium was full, but this is a great amount of people. Now, I bet you we all can think of someone like oh, so-and-so should be here tonight. Perhaps some of us are married to so-and-so. Right? Right? It's very hard to change the behavior of someone who has a very strongly held belief that this is what we're going to do. That dad in the car, you're not going to change his mind until his kid quit and moved out, and then maybe he'll think about it. But see, in sports, again, most people are in the middle. Right? In all the teams I've coached, there's been there's one or two who have lost the plot. And there's a couple who, were just perfect. And usually it's like their fourth kid, and they just don't care anymore. Right? Right? But most people are in the middle. And we can spend a ton of emotional energy worried about the outliers. But if we can take the ones in the middle, and we can educate them, we can teach them, and say, this is how you can help your kids. And here at Fallston Soccer Club, or lacrosse, or rec, or whatever, this is what we're doing. Right? This is how we do things here. And create sidelines where people start taking care of that themselves. That's when the magic happens. We work with a rec district in Wisconsin that had 7 years of declining numbers. And they got a new sports director who said, we're going to change this. We're going to define who we are and how we do things here. We're going to build a program based on in-town play, because I think people want that. Based on inclusion, right? Based on learning. Hey, you're in, your kids are going to get better. We're going to educate our coaches over and over and over. And we're going to educate our parents and hold them accountable for how they act on the sidelines. Since then, in 3 years, their numbers are up 50% in their 4 main sports. He said the best thing is, with even 50% more people, I have less issues than I ever had before. Because the parents have started to go up to the new parents on the sidelines and say, oh, no. It's not what we say to 12-year-old referees. Right? That's not how we do things here. So these changes can be made. And it takes courage, and like changing any behavior, whether it's changing the behaviors of our teams, it's changing the behavior of the community, it takes time. And the fastest way to do it is just to do it every day. Okay? So, a couple of recommended resources. I want to give you guys a second for questions. Power of Moments, great book by Chip and Dan Heath. My colleague Jerry Lynch was Way of Champions. Let Them Play is great. I didn't talk much about mindset. Carol Dweck's work on the growth versus the fixed mindset. Some incredible research on motivation and performance. It's a book that I think they should hand you in the delivery room instead of just the kid, like, don't screw this up. Right? It's a phenomenal book. If you only have 15 minutes, she has a great TED Talk called The Power of Yet, which is wonderful as well. All right, and there's all my information. We've got tons and tons of blogs that you can get there in yellow. We've got a podcast, one of the most popular coaching podcasts out there. And then I have some books for you outside. They're $15. There's a vigorous black market. I'll sign it for you. It'll be worth $16 tomorrow. Right? So, but I'd love for you to be able to grab the book. The books also come with a free Kindle version of it. So if you're a Kindle reader, you can grab one here and get it there as well. But I hope you'll take it. I hope you'll share it. I hope you'll think about the 80% and say, who can I share this message with? Right? Go share it with them, because we need to make sports about the needs, the values, and the priorities of our children, so they'll stop walking